and did a little digging on like who are the strongest superhero characters like in all the universes, and she's up there. I think she's like number 8, and like she's above Superman because
really,
yeah, because Superman, you take away the sun, powerless. That's the only reason why he has his powers is because.
No, you're right. I hadn't really thought of that, but yeah,
Wonder Woman is a god. Like flat out, she's up there with Thor. You know.
Wow.
And Thor not as strong without Mjolnir, and like she can run 60 miles an hour. She can jump the height of a skyscraper. Her strength is equal to Superman.
Now that's her
her raw strength? Exactly. Like for example, she can bench press 15,000 pounds, no problem. Her power clean, if she had to do it, would be upwards of 50,000 pounds. Like I mean, unbelievable strength.
Never let your guard down. You expect the battle to be fair. A battle will never be fair.
Hey guys, I'm here with Eric Garcia,
Hello.
The second Eric to be on my channel. And we go back to high school.
Yep. 2001.
Yeah, this is way back.
To date us.
Ancient history.
Yeah.
And I'm in Alaska today.
Yay.
Because we're here for your lovely wedding.
Yep. That's going on tomorrow.
Yeah. So anyway, so we wanted to talk about Wonder Woman, which I've seen twice and.
I've seen twice as
well.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Big fans of this movie, I think.
It's by far my favorite DC movie to date of the
EU?
modern EU. Yeah.
What was your familiarity with the character going into it?
You know, I grew up being pretty involved in comic books. You know, my dad was an avid collector as a child, and my uncles were too, and a couple of my cousins actually. My cousin Daniel is actually sending me a signed comic book from Stan Lee.
Oh, cool.
For my wedding. So, I mean,
that's nice.
That gives a little bit of a background as to how into it my family kind of is. So, when I heard that Wonder Woman was coming out and, you know, it was a female director that was taking charge with this story, I knew kind of right away that this is going to be a story that would be faithful to the history of the character.
I didn't have any experience with a comic going into it. I've never really been a big comic book guy. I didn't grow up with Marvel or DC comics. You know, I read a couple graphic novels here and there. I mean, I read Watchmen, I read DMZ and Y the Last Man and stuff like that. Mouse, but like really, I was never really into the superhero comics themselves. My experience with superheroes was primarily through movies and television. I had no idea, like even like what the origin of the character was.
Just that maybe she was an Amazonian. Like, I think that's pretty common.
Yeah, I had just that was basically all I but I didn't know anything about like the creator or you know the history of the not just the character within the fictional universe, but as a franchise.
Wonder Woman, the character, has been continuously published, with the exception of a few years in the 80s, where there weren't any comics coming out for her storyline. The fact that they were able to capture the essence of what her entire storyline, gold, silver, and bronze age eras of all 3 different kind of storylines, it blew me away.
I actually started reading Wonder Woman after the movie, just to, out of curiosity. For some reason, the movie really made me want to like read up on it,
engage in the story. And
so I read the George Perez original run, and then I went back to, I found the original, the introduction that Marston created for Wonder Woman in, was it All-Star Comics number 8?
All-Star Comics, back in 1941.
Yeah. I don't know if you've taken a look at the original introduction, but like it's kind of
so corny.
It's corny, and it's funny in that, like, in the movie where they really they committed to the ancient Greek thing. But the original version of Wonder Woman, they were living on an island that was also evolving. So they had this like magic sphere that allowed them to like keep up with the rest of the world.
Technology and
so
stuff.
they had their own like they had like a doctor with a nurse outfit on there. And They had like their own technology. They had their own like planes and stuff. And it was really funny to read that. And I'm glad they didn't really go that route. They went they were stuck to the ancient like stuck in a bubble of time kind of thing, which I thought was great. But the other thing that really stood out to me from that original run, or that rather that introduction, was how much of it really read like propaganda, like war propaganda.
And in a lot of ways it was, because back in 1941, that was right in the middle of the Great...
That was our entry to the war.
To World War II, and you know it was a little bit before Pearl Harbor. Let's see, October 1941 was the...
And Pearl Harbor was...
December
7th, right? Yeah, okay. So it was
a little right before.
It was right before our entry to the war.
Yeah, since her character was created during World War II, a lot can be said about her costume, which back in the original run was so just Americana, like.
Well, it was explicitly in the intro. This is what actually stood out to me so much, is that it was literally like. They gave her an outfit and they designed it to match the colors of the country that she was going to go defend.
Exactly.
Like, her mission wasn't just to, defend justice and freedom in front of the world. It was specifically because Steve Trevor crash lands and she like falls in love with him because he's beautiful or something. Like, he's like totally knocked out and unconscious.
Yeah.
She has no interaction with him at all, but she's like, I love him. I need to go help him, and I need to go help the Americans.
Exactly.
And there was like a line of dialogue where I think her mother or somebody basically said, American freedom and democratic values must be protected and defended. And that's kind of what you're going to be doing. And I'm like, whoa, this is like really laying on thick, you know. And the George Perez run was set, at the time, was contemporary 80s, so it was in the Cold War.
Yeah.
So that the thing that Ares was threatening was nuclear war.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was a really, really good choice to move it back even further to World War I, which is the war that everyone thought would be the war to end all wars.
The last war, yeah.
It was the Great War. It was the one that how could you possibly keep fighting after this?
Yeah.
And of course, humanity always finds a way. But so you still have like the original sense of like the original enemy was the Germans, but without the kind of super propagandistic anti-Nazi kind of thing. Like it was more like war is terrible than necessarily those people. It was
taking what I feel is a higher level approach to a viewpoint on war.
It was remarkably diverse in its treatment of World War I. A lot of people they're not really conscious of how many countries and how many people were involved in that war. They think of like, it was a European war, right? It was Germany and Russia and France and Great Britain and America, and that's kind of as far as it goes in terms of their conception of it.
Yeah.
And then of course there were allied countries who were joining, but there were also colonial troops, right? The British Expeditionary Force wasn't just British soldiers and Australians and New Zealanders.
It was
Indians. The Indian army was there fighting in Europe.
Yeah.
For their colonial masters.
Yeah.
And the movie takes place, as far as I can tell, with the British Expeditionary Force.
Yeah.
So when they're at the train station or before they were about to enter,
there's the guys that were dressed differently than the traditional British soldiers. If you watch,
in addition to the British regulars you saw on screen, you were also seeing, like, the sniper, his character is a Scottish Highlanders who's wearing the kilt.
Yeah.
You were also seeing Scottish Lowlanders in there with their special cap and all that, and I think I spotted a couple Indian troops in there too.
There are a couple Sikhs. They had the head garb, which I think is awesome because it was clearly a militarized version because it had the whole strap. And
those were from the Indian Army.
And that's amazing that they took the time to put those little they have no lines. They're merely just...
This is the tableau. This is the tableau of humanity. The entire world is involved in this. And they actually have a line of dialogue where when Steve's telling them about the war.
Yeah.
And he lists off exactly how many countries. It's something that you don't even really see in movies about World War II, and we love to make movies about World War II.
Yeah.
You don't really see movies acknowledge the breadth of both of these wars and how many different countries were involved. And that gives me hope for any kind of Wonder Woman sequel down the road, that they might pay more attention to her historical context.
Yeah.
And show you, like, the squad she went in with.
I wanted to touch briefly on Chief.
Yeah.
I think that's a very understated but important character in the whole progression of the movie, and in the progression of Native American representation in movies, because you know, there a lot of times when people cast for a Native American role, like a great example is Tonto. Yeah, I was very disappointed that the fact, like, just because it was Johnny Depp, they're like, it's okay.
Yeah,
but
he's got a 1,000% or whatever.
And then you have actors like Chief, the actor who portrays Chief. His name is Eugene Blackrock. He was originally got into Hollywood by doing stunts, so he's not a born-bred actor. And I think it's really interesting that he's transitioned into this role, and I really hope that we get to see him again. Because
I would like that too, although I doubt they'll go back to the World War I era.
No.
What they might do is they might go a few more years in the future, and you'll see him as an old man, maybe.
Yeah, and they let him pick out his wardrobe.
Yeah, he dressed himself.
To me, that takes a huge amount of respect and appreciation for someone's culture to say, I am not familiar with your culture enough to dress you properly.
Yeah.
Do you feel comfortable doing this yourself?
Yeah.
And he's like, heck yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, there was that one scene where Diana asks Chief, you know, where are your people? Why aren't you fighting with your people? And it's so depressing because I think that ultimately that chips away at her hope for humanity as well, because she trusts Steve so much, yet his people are the ones that killed my people. And you just see the look on her face of just like shock and disappointment and a little bit of sadness, just all in a flash.
And also confusion for the complexity of the war, right?
Exactly.
That here you have this guy who he's fighting alongside the guy who essentially exterminated his people and took over his land, right? Like, and Chief, I know some people have taken issue with him being called Chief in the movie. That like that's kind of like
who are you to judge? He could be.
He could literally be a chief. But also I think it's also kind of, I would imagine easily that would be the term of endearment people back then would use.
And it would be an appropriate term for the time period.
But I think like if he was okay with it, then I would demur to his feelings about it, because he had so much of a role in crafting his character. And they also give him it's a small thing, but they give him a plot point where he does the smoke signals to he's the one who follows Ludendorff and is able to come up with a signaling system for Diana. Yeah. But also Diana and him are parallels to each other, right? They're both people who can never return home.
Because they don't have a home.
Right. Because this wasn't the case in the comics necessarily, but in the movie they made it so that once she left Paradise Island, she could never come back. Yeah. And so they're kindred spirits in that sense. That they're both homeless because of Steve. Or, metaphorically because of Steve. The multiculturalism of her squad was important. And kind of pleasantly surprising for me, given how kind of tone deaf the DCEU has kind of been about that. Like they had a Native American character in Slipknot in Suicide Squad, and he's the only guy who doesn't get to do literally anything. Yeah, like he dies. He jumps up a wall and dies. Exactly like they told him would happen. Don't leave, because he'll push the button, you'll die. And he died. And like, why would you bother doing that? So I think this is a very good corrective measure for that, where you have this unfortunate use of a Native American character as cannon fodder. Yeah. Just to tell you what you already know, which is that we've got an explosive device. We don't need to see it in action, but I guess they felt they needed to, so we're going to use the most disposable character, the Native American, and blow him up.
Oh, he's from Smoke Signals, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Hey, Victor.
You know, and it's sad that we can count, you know, our or social experiences with these characters and this culture. Okay, we've got Smoke Signals. We got the guy from Suicide Squad. Oh, he's from Smoke Signals.
Yeah.
And then we have this guy in Wonder Woman. Like,
there's very few off the top of your head that you can start listing off like movies with Native American characters or about Native American culture or history. There's so few.
And you go back 50, 60 years ago, and the same could be said about African American actors.
For sure. For sure, and even
Latino actors,
and there's all the erasure that happens too with people wearing red face or black face or yellow face, and denying people of certain ethnicities playing their own characters.
Yeah, and I think to step away from, you know, politicizing or polarizing movies, and specifically Wonder Woman, I think it was just really well done. Like,
regardless of what your political leanings are and what it is you want to see out of representation and diversity on screen, beyond all that, it was just a good movie.
Yeah.
Like, it was it's exactly the kind of movie I want to see more of. A mass market, broad appeal kind of movie that also, at the same time, is taking some steps to include other people who usually aren't included in movies.
Exactly.
And to give them, you know, because people who are always represented probably won't really notice that much. They're not going to be like, why is the Native American character having lines? God damn it! They should be silent. Like, no one's going to really have that reaction. No. But for the people who are Native American, who don't really see any kind of avenue to be part of America in any bigger way, who, if they have aspirations to join Hollywood as an actor or what have you,
they can.
They know for sure they can. Like, the more you do this, the more you encourage these people to be a part of what we have.
It's taking steps forward that need to happen to promote more creativity and more authenticity at the same time.
Yeah,
where
authenticity, for sure.
That's important. And I think, like your comment about the multinational soldier force for the British Army, I didn't notice that until you brought it up. And that, to me, is equally important as casting a Native American actor as portraying a Native American soldier, so to speak. So,
and by the way, like, Wonder Woman having been created as a character who was basically an American superhero.
Yeah.
Right? Someone who is going to be living in the United States, fighting for American ideals against the forces of tyranny and oppression that exist external. Right? The fact that this movie took great pains to show is that she's actually a hero of the world.
Yeah.
Steve is American, but he's fighting for the British. She's involved with the Expeditionary Force and all this multicultural unit. And in the bookends, we see that she's not in America at all. She's in France. She's fighting for all of humanity, regardless of where they live.
Yeah. With the fact that Ares did end up being behind the whole plot line, it also feeds into other storylines of Wonder Woman actually going and fighting deities that mean harm, that mean to destroy humanity.
Yeah, I mean, the comic book universes have always been outlandish, and they in themselves reflect mythology, and I think Wonder Woman is probably the most self-conscious of those characters, of the big ones that I can think of, that she's literally a god.
Yeah.
She literally exists in a world of gods.
Yeah.
She constantly, certainly in the George Perez run that I read, she's always being called back to talk to the gods,
engaged
with their bullshit
directly. Yeah. Now I think DC's kind of focused in on what their long range plan is as to what they want to do with their characters. Because I mean, Marvel has just been mopping the floor with them for years, and I don't really like the Marvel movies to the degree of which I like Wonder Woman. They just they have a formula down. They have a plan,
they stick to it,
and it makes tons of money.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I think DC has not quite captured yet.
Yeah, and I think they, I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I think they did they initially had a smart concept of how to differentiate themselves from Marvel, which is if Marvel's going to be the kind of frivolous, nothing really matters all that much, that the worst possible consequence in one of your biggest movies where half your heroes are fighting each other is that a guy gets paralyzed and then they make a suit for him immediately afterwards and everything's fine.
Yeah.
Like if that's the worst it gets, that then DC would take the opposite route
and go dark
and go dark and like, you know, Batman vs Superman, Robin's already dead, and like Batman for some reason has Robin's suit encased in like a museum piece in the middle of his thing. Like
that's dark,
and that's pretty fucking dark.
Yeah,
and he's, you know, he's branding people and all that. So I get the idea. I think like in concept, yeah, you shouldn't try to be as happy-go-lucky as the Marvel movies are. But they went too dark.
Mm-hmm.
Things got so bleak that they lost what I believe is like the core of what a hero is, which is heroism, right? Hope. Yeah, having some kind of like fighting for something good, and having that be an explicit part of who the character is, as opposed to just kind of like in Batman vs Superman. Neither Batman nor Superman are really fighting for good.
No.
They're just kind of annoyed at each other for being like, you know, mirror versions of themselves.
And they sprinkled in, you know, a poorly acted version of a great villain who is one of my all-time favorites.
Oh, Lex?
Lex is phenomenal, and I left the movie feeling very empty about that character, and they put it in there just to create that tension and drama to push the story along.
Yeah.
You know, he has the woman that, you know, we need to save, and
Lex wasn't. I mean, even if you can get past the performance, which is certainly
lackluster for sure.
I don't think a lot of people are a big fan of that performance, to say the least.
No.
But if you get past that, just story-wise, what Lex is doing doesn't seem that interesting. Like, he's supposed to be a mastermind. Like, he's a guy who can go toe-to-toe with Superman because of how smart he is.
Yes.
And how cunning he is.
Yes.
He's got no powers. And he goes up against a guy who has godlike powers and is his equal.
Yeah.
We didn't really see any of that in the movie.
And that's where I think Wonder Woman stands out, as they accomplished that. They made a villain, which the first time I saw it, I had a slight inkling that it may be that guy.
Mm-hmm.
It may be the British commander.
Yeah, I forget his name. I forget the actor's name.
But
Lupin. Yeah.
But I was a little surprised when like I wasn't surprised that, you know, when she killed the guy that it wasn't Ares.
That was telegraphed.
But the friction that immediately began after that scene with, you know, the build up to their end finale fight scene was done so tastefully and had such good build up to it. Yeah, they definitely did a lot better job of establishing a good bad guy.
Well, yeah, he was definitely more interesting than anything we've seen in the DCEU thus far.
And I would say even in a lot of the Marvel too, because
but this is a problem with the movies today in general, is that the villains generally suck. Like they're forgettable. They're weak. They're easily defeated or killed. They only show up for one movie usually before getting taken out.
Yeah.
There's no sense of like continuity with a lot of these villains. The few of the ones that do exist, like Loki. Loki is likable. And he's also not really a full villain. Like after a while, he kind of becomes like this kind of anti-hero, like wild card kind of figure.
He's a little bit neutral.
Yeah,
he's not 100%
chaotic neutral or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And that's not the same as like as a villain that's really
like a Joker or a Lex who's just
right. Who's like they've already crossed the line. They're never coming back.
No. Yeah.
Someone who continually antagonizes and gets away with it. The arch nemesis. Ares' reveal was cool, and I think himself as a fighter opposed to her. I think those scenes were cool. They were fun, but I felt they would have been better suited as an introduction to Ares.
Yeah.
As opposed to he's here now, he's dead. If he was somebody who he revealed himself, they fought, and he gets away to continue to create more destruction throughout the ages, and it's someone that she has to continually fight against throughout the rest of these movies, and becomes her arch nemesis.
Yeah.
Kind of like the way he was to a certain degree in the comics. That he kept popping back up again. He never really disappeared. So hopefully, I would kind of hope they do bring him back in some capacity, just because it'd be kind of lame if he's just like the god of war gets taken out in one movie.
In one movie, no.
Like,
No, I think it would be cool if they tell more of her story in between present day Diana and the Diana we saw in this movie.
By the time Batman v Superman happens, she's like very jaded.
She's lost a lot of faith in
right.
those that she considers to be quote-unquote heroes,
right.
because of all of the destruction, damage, chaos that has ensued. And, you know, at the end of, or in Batman v Superman, society has already turned on the whole idea of heroes.
For good reason.
For good reason. I mean, when you destroy a whole city, that's kind of not cool.
100 years ago, I walked away from mankind. From a century of horrors. Man made a world where standing together is impossible.
We want to see where that darkness comes from Gal's perspective in the Batman vs. Superman movie, where she's just so jaded. I think if they went down that deep, dark hole of despair and, you know, losing hope, and, you know, even say she loses hope in humanity. I mean, that would be a big blow to her character as a person, you know, and where I think we could encounter that is that resistance against heroes. She no longer feeling wanted in this world. She slowly loses hope there, and I think it could go both sides. She could lose hope in her counterparts, the heroes, or she could also lose hope in humanity.
I think both. Yeah. And just think of the era she's lived through, right? Just in America alone.
Exactly.
You know, after World War II, still dealing with segregation, still dealing with like this heavily unequal society that went on for decades.
It's still going on. I mean.
Yeah, and then, you know, the involvement with Vietnam, our involvement with other, you know, our interventions in Latin America and you know, the Middle East and Africa and Asia and all this kind of stuff. Like there's all this material for her to confront, instead of just being like, well, for now I'll help the British and the Americans fight the Germans.
Yeah.
Coming back home in a time of peace and seeing, you know, a time of peace and seeing what is actually going on in society, and having to deal with that and protect these people at the same time, trying to like fix the society's ills, and she's not going to be able to do it.
And that's what the whole character was created for, was to do what's right,
no matter what.
No matter what.
Yeah.
You know, make it gritty, make it dark, but don't go Batman versus Superman dark. Don't go that far where you lose interest and it seems hopeless.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think Wonder Woman as a historical figure would ever go that far in her own psyche of becoming hopeless, because if she did, there would be no reason for her to exist anymore.
Yeah, no, the defining feature of her character is ultimately the joy that she can bring.
Exactly.
Because she's so positive. And we see this, I mean, pretty much like the iconic like depiction of Wonder Woman is her flying with a giant grin on her face.
Yeah.
Like, she has fun just existing. Like because she's so optimistic. And you see this all over the movie. Like one of my favorite scenes, it's a small little moment, but it's when she gets ice cream.
Yeah.
She gets ice cream and she eats it, and suddenly there's this, it's just like this like, she gives into the pleasure. She has no shame in showing how much she enjoys it, and she turns and talks to the guy and is like, you should be proud.
Yeah.
Like that kind of thing is like, that's her in a nutshell. Like these moments of pure joy, her never having seen snow before.
Yeah.
And that moment of like,
of awe and wonder.
She's in the moment.
Yeah.
In a way that other superheroes never are.
Nope.
And that's that kind of like heartbreaking innocence that she has. That I certainly found it very difficult not to fall in love with her because of that.
Yeah.
One of the things that I felt while watching it was kind of, I felt guilty. Her entire experience in the world of humanity was that she was not free.
Yeah.
Right? The moment she set foot into this world, there were all these restrictions put upon her, all these chains.
Yeah.
And these are all the things that we've done to ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And every scene in which she stood up to that, like, one of my favorite scenes is the conversation she has with Steve after she kills Ludendorff. And Steve has this wonderful, like, back and forth with her where he goes, like, maybe I'm to blame. Maybe we're all to blame. I don't know.
Yeah.
And you can see that kind of hurt on his face of, like, we should have been better than this. But I can't explain it.
He realized at that moment that not only humanity as a whole is letting her down,
yeah,
but he realizes that she realized it.
Yeah.
And that unlimited faith and hope in Steve as a person and Steve as humanity has just been knocked down a little bit.
Yeah. It's not often you see that kind of innocence as a source of strength.
Yeah.
That usually someone who's that naive about the real world is either played to comedic effect
or as a victim.
Or they're a victim or they're kind of pitiful, you know. Yeah. But instead, the very fact that she didn't understand how awful humanity has made the world, that she came in, that she wouldn't, she didn't know how the rules were, so she didn't listen to them. She would just do what she needed to do. Yeah. And she was more powerful because of it. Like, going into the room where all the politicians were arguing, she'd never had a man tell her not to shut up before. Yeah. Right? So they told her to shut up, and she's like, no, I'm going to keep talking. Yeah. Like, no.
And I think that leads straight into what I would argue is the most significant scene in the entire movie is the No Man's Land.
Yeah.
And it's not just the way it was shot or the special effects they did. It was the emotion that it brought out in the audience. And I've read a couple of articles that talk about this specifically, saying this is what female superheroes needed.
Yeah.
To display that just raw power and emotion of, I'm going to do what's right no matter what, and I don't care what anybody else says, I'm going to do it anyway.
The depiction, the literal depiction of strength, like these Amazons are not depicted as dainty women who are fighting in female ways.
They are battle-forged warriors that are, like, in the research, she's trained in over 200 different styles of battle and fighting and all manner of weaponry.
Yeah.
Like, that alone, you go hand to hand against her, she'll beat you 200 different ways.
It was a kind of strength that didn't feel like it was like, this is how girls fight, right? Which you see all the time. Like, even Buffy, like the way she holds her fists or whatever. Like, there's this move that you see a lot of, like, martial arts characters do. Where they'll get a man between her legs and, like, break his neck or whatever.
Yeah, with their thighs or whatever.
And, like, it's clearly like a sexualized, like, only a woman would. You never see a man really do that, like, do the back flip, like, yeah, I got you. Like, you don't really see that happen. And so the way they were showing these women fighting, they avoided all those tropes. The scene when they charge the beach, I remember watching that being like, I haven't really seen this before. Like, I might have seen, like, an individual, like Buffy or Xena, but an entire army of people like that on the battlefield, you know, toe-to-toe with these guys with rifles and all that. Like, it was, I felt, and I was surprised to be feeling this from a DCEU movie, but I felt inspired.
Yeah.
I hadn't felt that in Man of Steel. I didn't feel that in Batman vs. Superman, and I certainly didn't feel that in Suicide Squad.
Yeah.
And I've been getting kind of tired of Marvel's formula, and suddenly out of the blue comes Wonder Woman with all those traits that I had felt had kind of gone by the wayside in these superhero movies. This kind of earnestness that you can believe, where all that kind of jaded quality has kind of faded away, and she really believes in love and truth and justice.
Yeah.
She can't sit there and lie to herself the way the rest of us do. She's not going to say there's nothing we can do, or it's out of our hands, or
that's not our mission.
It's not our job, it's not our mission. She doesn't listen to any of that.
Nope.
And that scene, Charging Across No Man's Land, is to me it's the linchpin of the whole movie. That's the scene in which she becomes a hero.
Yes.
Because she makes a choice that you and I can't do. I find it hard to imagine that people were arguing with Patty Jenkins about whether or not that scene.
Why is this one of the producers asked her, like, why is this in here?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, no, she had to fight tooth and nail to keep that scene.
If she had let go of that scene, they probably would have kept chipping away at what she wanted to do.
Yeah.
And I think that has a lot to say about the state of the gender politics that exist in all industries.
Yeah.
Where, we can't speak of this from experience, but just the fact that she had to fight for a particular scene that focused solely on a female character and nothing else. Yeah, I think that goes 2 layers deep there. And it's
and that's reflected in the scene, right?
Exactly.
It's this kind of meta thing where it's a scene about Wonder Woman saying, "No, I'm not. I will do this thing. You can't tell me no."
Yeah.
And then the studio heads are being like, "You can't do this," and Patty Jenkins had to be like, "No, I have to do this. I need to show a woman standing up for herself and for other people despite what everyone else is saying."
And we like to say we've made tons of progress, and we're more free now than we ever have been, but
we haven't made as much as we'd like to think.
Exactly.
And I think bringing her back onto the screen would help with that a lot. I think
exactly.
Reminding us that we should all hold ourselves to a much higher standard.
Mm-hmm.
When you realize that Wonder Woman historically, you go back and you read those original 1940s comics, and by today's lens, they're hokey and sexist maybe and all that.
Yeah.
But at the time, Wonder Woman was and has always been a symbol for the progress of women's rights and status in society. She's kind of always been that she's carried the banner, so to speak. And her absence from the movies and from television for so long. Yeah. I'm upset that it took this long for that to be corrected. Yeah. But I'm glad that when it happened, it was done correctly. It was done well. Going forward. Yes. That needs to be addressed. I think the DCEU clearly they have their work cut out for them because they were already committed to this gritty, super dark, bleak vision. And outside of Wonder Woman, they've been having to improvise a course correction. Like with Suicide Squad, they were trying to slap in some new music and flashy graphics and trying to turn away from the stuff that people were just not really buying into. When we saw the preview, I thought it was great that they had the Justice League preview before Wonder Woman. Yeah. And I was just like, doesn't feel the same. Yeah. And I think because Justice League was already almost done by the time Wonder Woman came out. Yeah. And I know they're doing reshoots, and I know Joss Whedon is adding new scenes and all that. Good. But to me, that also sounds like a big course correction. Like Joss Whedon and Zack Snyder are worlds apart, and I don't know if adding some Joss Whedon scenes is gonna feel like it meshes well with the product that's already made. I hope Joss takes whatever he is taking out, it just chops the slow-mo in half. Zack Snyder likes the slow motion a little too much. We saw that in Wonder Woman too. But in Wonder Woman, I felt it was just the right amount. Tastefully done. It was enough to make it look like, yes, this is the aesthetic of the DCEU, but we're not going to overdo it. Yeah. 300. Yeah, it's there just enough to be a part of the universe. And there were some of those shots I thought were really great. There was one where when she's fighting Ludendorff, I think. Mm-hmm. And they slow it down so you can see her do two moves at the same time. She blocks something and kicks at the same time. It was a really cool, beautiful shot. Yeah. But in terms of tone, I think DC has a problem in its hands now because Wonder Woman, I think, showed how to do it. This is World War I. It's a dark place. It's not a happy-go-lucky place. It's not the Marvel heroes fighting in an empty airport, right? Like, that's as consequenceless as you can get. It's fine, no one's gonna get hurt. And then when they do get hurt, everyone's like, what? He broke his back?
Yeah.
That wasn't supposed to happen. We were only throwing vehicles at each other. Like, so to go to World War I is a really dark place. You're talking about an entire village being enslaved. You're seeing the trenches, which are horrible, and just all the suffering and mutilation. I mean, they're cutting away to people, like, holding the stumps of their legs.
Yeah.
Like, it's super dark. And yeah, she does liberate that village, but then they get wiped out. Like, that victory is taken away from her. And that darkness, that is the level of darkness that DC, I think, aspires to. But then they go too far.
Yep, they just keep going.
Because they
plow straight through that.
Yeah, they make their
zone.
heroes too dark. When you've got Batman branding people and you got Superman breaking people's necks, there's no escape from the bleakness.
No.
There's no one to find inspirations and salvation from. And I think Justice League, from that trailer, looked like they were going super dark and again.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's going to capture that same spirit.
I hope the Flash brings a little
levity,
and just lifts it up a little bit and gets a little bit of humor in there to where it's tolerable.
There were some flashes, like that. They had that one. To me, it felt like a Joss Whedon moment when I think, was it the Flash, asks him, what's your superpower? Ask Bruce Wayne.
I'm rich.
And like, that's a great little moment.
Yeah.
And I think you need a little more of that. You need some, not to the extent of, like, where it's just all banter all the time, the way it is in the Marvel movies. They're always joking, even
all
in
one-liners.
Even in, like, moments when they probably shouldn't be doing that. Like, there's so much levity in that universe. You still need a little bit of humor.
Yeah.
To show these people are human.
I think as long as we get a few more individual movies before they start just going ham on the Justice League series, that'd be great. You know, they kind of did that with the Avengers, where they did the first Avengers and then they spritzed in between a couple movies that weren't explicitly tied to the Avengers universe, but they gave you more storyline. Like with Iron Man 3, you got a whole another set of characters and backstories that the Avengers didn't let you experience. So I think as long as we get more individual movies along with Justice League in there, they'll be fine. And then they'll have a chance to redeem themselves from the last two that they've made before Wonder Woman.
Okay, up next will be a short in-focus essay on Get Out, followed by, finally, my Alien 3 essay, and I have several videos planned for Twin Peaks The Return, and on top of all of that, I'm finally going to be launching my Patreon account. So there's a lot coming down the line, I promise you.